Which appraisal is correct? This week on Behind the Gavel with Jason, we'll be talking about the Harry and Linda Macklowe estate. Harry is a real estate developer in New York City, billionaire status. Him and his wife married 59 years and are getting a divorce. During that time, they collected art, some of the biggest names in the field, and they are now having to sell because the appraisals that they each came up with varied in the hundreds of millions of dollars range. And so we're going to be talking about, is that even possible? Why is that the case? And so on and so forth. So I just shared this on my page here so my friends can watch. So if you're watching, have questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and post them here, drop me a direct message, or give us a phone call. I'll give you that information later on. But essentially what we're talking about today is Harry and Linda Macklowe. They have an art collection worth in the range of $700 million. Getting divorced has been a very bitter fight. They've been fighting for a couple of years now, according to the press. Artnet.com is where we got quite a bit of this information, but it's been around. It's been a conversation for a couple of years now, if I remember correctly. In their collection, they have Warhol, they have 9 Picassos, a dozen Jeff Koons, Bryce Martin, Giacometti, Donald Judd, de Kooning, Rothko, Twombly, and many, many, many more. All the names that you know, recognize, and make the auction houses a flitter with excitement are in this collection. As part of the divorce proceedings, they had to come up with a value to establish distribution amongst themselves. According to what I've read, Linda wants to keep it. She's the one who introduced art to the couple. Harry wants the cash value, and so they had their appraisers go to work. Here's value these on a fair market value basis. Linda's team valued them on a marketable cash value basis. Both are very solid ways of appraising things, but have much different structures and usually come up with different values, and that is the case, and we'll show through here. Marketable cash value is generally used in a divorce situation because it is basically is the value of the work's net of expenses is the terminology used. And so when you have that net of expenses, it means that essentially what's it going to sell for and what are the costs going to be, and will those costs have to be taken off from somebody. And so that's where the marketable cash value comes in. So I was just looking at Christie's website because that's who has been mentioned in the court documents by a judge. Christie's did an appraisal of the collection a couple of years ago. Christie's has a sliding scale buyer's premium commission structure of 25% buyer's premium on the first $300,000, 20% from $300,000 to $4 million. And as of February 1st, in just a couple of days, it's 13.5% on anything over $4 million. And so it's, the higher the value, the less commission they get, but it's a sliding scale. It doesn't drop in the meantime. So those numbers have to be removed from value. And then if there's any commissions paid to the auction house in addition to the buyer's premium, those values have to be removed from the value, and other expenses that might be incurred, such as insurance, while it's in the possession of Christie's, any of Christie's charges for photography or catalog work, insurance, security, whatever they can charge for, they charge for, and those costs need to be deducted from the value of the works. And here's where, fair market value is generally used in a donation setting where the value isn't, there's no money changing hands, but it's being donated to an organization, a foundation, a museum. And so that's where the value difference lies. Thanks for watching, Stacy. Thanks for watching, Titus. If you have any questions, go ahead and post them here. Hit the like button, the share button. If you have any, I think friends of yours might be interested in watching this as well, share it with them. So a couple of pieces in particular had extreme value range differences by these teams. They have an Albert Giacometti Lanez sculpture. There's 5 of these ever produced. Don't come to the market very often, obviously. Linda's appraisal team, looking for marketable cash value, came up with a value of $35 million on this sculpture. Big number. Harry's teams said it was worth $65 million. And they cater these values to a couple of different sources. Obviously, they have access to the same public records, of course. Their sales records on Christie's, Sotheby's, ArtNet has a huge database of auction records that you can tap into and see what these pieces have sold publicly. But there are also these pieces and similar pieces selling privately. So if you know of a retail gallery that had a similar Giacometti bronze that sold for $50 or $60 million 3 years ago, you can include that information in your appraisal. And so both appraisal values are correct. And again, they're looking at slightly different value basis. The marketable cash value is going to say, well, if it brought $50 million after expenses at Christie's, you're only going to net 38 or 40. And so that changes the value compared to fair market value. And so that's one of the reasons for the difference. Let's see, generally speaking in the appraisal, and there were 3 groups, there's hundreds of pieces in this collection. Generally speaking, Harry's team came up with higher values because they were looking at it with a different lens. But there were instances like they have a Pollock number 17, which Linda's team appraised at $35 million and Harry's team appraised at $15 million. And so there was ups and downs on both sides, but they couldn't balance out. And so what did the judge do with all this information? I want to say Linda's overall value came in at somewhere around on the pieces that were disputed. So the judge broke down the collection into 3 silos, 3 groups. Group number 1, the values were very comparable. And so there was not the question of value that was extreme. So she said, group number 1, big numbers, right? Group number 1, and again, Linda wants to keep this collection, Harry wants the value. She said, the judge said that Linda could keep this collection. It's worth roughly, where's that number at? $40 million. So this group in column A is worth $40 million. Obviously, it's still great pieces, but the lesser of the collection. And she said, you can have these, but you have to give the cash value of $20 million to Harry because it's an equitable distribution. They're both taking half the estate because it's a divorce. The other thing to know is they've been married 59 years. When they got married, neither one of them came to the marriage with assets of great value. And so they didn't, it's not like one of them had 4 Picassos when they came to the marriage. They got married when they were 20 and 21 years old, and they kind of self-made themselves. He was a real estate developer. The other 2 silos, and I'm not sure why they were divided up this way. I didn't delve into the court documents, but they basically broke down into 2 other groups that will be sold because the values cumulatively, her camp said they were worth around $650 million. His camp said around $900 million. That's a really large spread. That's a larger spread than the commissions would be. And so the judge said those 2 portions of the collection have to be sold at auction. And this was all done a couple of weeks ago. And as of that time, they had 45 days to come up with basically a plan and put a person in place of the project to liquidate the collection. And so in the next 30 days or so, we'll be hearing about who was appointed that executor, essentially, that's what I'm going to call it, and then see the proceedings as they go forward. It's really fascinating to watch this from afar because although the numbers are huge, if you brought them down into numbers that we can all relate to, let's say you have a couple of cars, a couple of classic cars in your collection that he wants to keep, she wants to sell. He says they're worth $70,000. She says they're worth $100,000. Same numbers, basically, just less decimal points. And so this conversation is crucial to those who are looking at these different scenarios. And it becomes more challenging depending upon, obviously, the larger the number, the bigger the risk, and the bigger the decimal points are. But percentage-wise, it's very similar. And so you have to be careful setting up any kind of an estate for equitable distribution or those kinds of things. Which value basis are you talking about? If, as an estate, you're looking to sell the collection, you don't want the fair market value. You want what's the marketable cash value basis, because I can sell something for $20,000, but we get paid something in there. There's costs involved with that. So it might be $20,000, but is what it's worth in the market. But you might, as a marketable cash value, it might be only $15,000. And so those are the kinds of things when you're looking to have an appraisal done, you want to make sure that your appraiser asks you questions such as, why are you having it done? And you need to know these numbers and know these reasons when you have asked these questions. Because if you ask for the wrong thing, the value will be correct in a certain column, but it may not be the column that you needed to be correct in. So asking questions of your appraiser is so crucial before you start spending money and start looking at what they say. Make sure they understand the scope of the project and that you understand what they're going to be giving you and why those numbers, why there's a discrepancy there. And that's probably the biggest takeaway from this is know what you need and make sure that your appraiser knows what you're needing and asking for before you sign any contracts, before you start writing checks, because it is appraisal work. It does cost some money. There's no doubt about it. It's a professional service that people like us and other companies offer, and we get paid accordingly because there's a lot of, when there's an appraisal, it's a legal document. We might have to stand up in front of a court and a judge at some point and say, why did we say that painting is worth $25,000? And so it's an important thing. It's an important document that you want to have, and you may or may not need it. And that's, again, another reason to ask questions before you start paying for an appraisal, and knowing what you need, why you need it, and what's going to be the best for your situation going forward. Thank you all so much for watching. It's been a crazy busy week here at the auction company. We've had more weather in Kansas City. Schools were closed the other day. It was 5 degrees here last night. It's supposed to get colder next week. Although I talked to my mom last night in Minnesota, it was 7 degrees below zero last night at 9:30. So I'm glad we're 300, 400 miles south of Minnesota at this point, because it won't get as cold here. If you have any questions, please post them here. Send us a direct message through our Messenger app here on Facebook. You can always give us a phone call at 816-283-3633. Drop us an email at info@kcauctioncompany.com. Letter K, letter C, auction company spelled out.com. Thank you all so much for watching. Next week, we'll have another Behind the Gavel with Jason conversation. I believe we're going to be talking about looking at fakes versus originals, because I think I have a couple of examples of both in-house right now, so we'll be able to do a show and tell, a compare and contrast between two different in the Coca-Cola world. So I'm excited about that. Look forward to talking to you all soon, and have a great weekend.